Walters is back as the official bar of the Nats Chat podcast for our 6th season of coverage. Located just across the street from the ballpark, Walters is the best sports bar in Navy Yard.
Here's the pitch. Swing a fly ball, deep right field for Wood. This one going back, way back it goes, and it is long gone. Into the first row of the second deck in right field. James Wood has his 5th homer of the season, and he's tied this game at 1. Nobody hotter on the planet right now than James Wood. Runners lead second and first. Turang and Contreras. Here it comes. Swinging a fly ball, deep left field. Back goes Lyle to the warning track, looking up, and it is gone. Sanchez ties it at 6 with a 3-run homer after the back-to-back walks.
Now the kick in the pitch. Swinging a ground ball hit hard up the middle. It's a base hit into center field. Abrams scores. Young around third coming home. Throw to the plate offline. He scores. And heading for second is Cade Ruiz on the throw to the plate. It's a single through the drawn-in infield. And 2 runs batted in for Cade Ruiz. And the Nationals are back in front here at the top of the 8th inning. It's now Washington 8, Milwaukee 6.
And welcome to Nats Chat, along with Washington Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman of NatsJournal.com. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. The Washington Nationals, over 15 games in MLB's 2026 regular season now, are 7-8 and have scored 89 runs. 89 runs over 15 games, nearly 6 runs per game. An 8-6 win at the Milwaukee Brewers on Sunday afternoon in a game in which the Nats overcame a 3-2 7th inning deficit. Did blow a 6-3 7th inning lead, but the Nats won and they completed a 3-game sweep. 7-8. Not bad for a team that has restarted a rebuild. This installment of Nats Chat brought to us by the great Mason Calvis, the top legal recruiter in Washington, D.C. Mason has been with us since our first season. You can reach him at 202-486-3535. So the Nats' 7-8 record is comprised of them being 6-3 on the road versus 1-5 at home. If you know your Nats history, as so many of you do, you know that this team over its history has had this bizarre tendency to be better on the road than at home. See the 2019 World Series. But forget about the where and let's focus on the what, especially from an offensive standpoint. Mark, this Nats offense has emerged as a real strength, one of the shocks of this season so far.
I think, Al, we kind of hoped and thought maybe this lineup, would clearly be better than the pitching staff and that there was the opportunity for it to be pretty good. But remember what we saw in spring training? They didn't hit at all. I think it was Brady House and one other guy did anything in spring training. But James Wood looked awful. Dylan Cruz, of course, looked awful and went to AAA. When they sent Robert Hassel down, when they sent Harry Ford down, you're thinking to yourself, how are they going to score runs? And really, from day one at Wrigley Field, it has not been an issue. But a couple of games here and there where they haven't gotten it going. But for the most part, this offense has been consistent, and it's not just one guy. I mean, yes, James Wood is playing out of his mind right now, but they're getting this from up and down the lineup, and yes, the bench as well. I want to get into the pinch hitting tendencies of Blake Butera and the production that they're getting when he brings in a guy off the bench to deliver late in games. They're getting big hits from Jacob Young, Cade Ruiz with one of his biggest hits in a long, long time in this game. It's really something to see the way they're coming together and doing so in a way that I think they're going to have to if they want to have any success at all right now, because given the state of the bullpen, this is the kind of team that is going to probably have to make up some deficits late. And you saw that in this game. That was really nice to see. What could have been a low point for them after the bullpen gave up the 3-run lead, they come right back and retake the lead and then hang on for the win.
It's pretty remarkable when you think about this. 0 offseason additions of consequence in terms of position players. Some of your key young players are not even on the major league roster right now, right? Dylan Cruz, Robert Hassel III, Harry Ford. And yet, here we are with the Nats with the 89 runs over 15 games. The Nats have a team OPS of 770. That is number 3 in the majors, with the obvious caveat of it's early. This is stunning what the Nats are doing offensively. All credit to not just the players, but also the coaching staff. The new process under Paul Taboni and Anirudh Kalambi and Blake Butera doing quite well so far. But yes, James Wood, he is doing better than quite well. The surge continues. Wood ended up having a monster series in this 3-game sweep at the Brewers. He on Sunday afternoon as the Nats starting right fielder and number 1 batter, 1 for 3 with a solo homer and 2 walks. And he had a steal of home.
Wood at third, Mead at first. The pitch, the runner goes at first. It's outside, throw to second. Mead comes to a stop, the throw to the plate. Wood slides, and he's tagged out on the foot, and Wood says, no, I'm safe.
After review, the call in the field is overturned. The runner is safe.
Wood in the Nats' 2-run fourth, leadoff homer to right field for a 1-0 Nats lead. But perhaps most memorable from James Wood in this game, he in the Nats' 4-run seventh drew a 2-out walk and had a 2-out steal of home to put the Nats up 5-3 as the Nats successfully pulled off the play. And if you are asking what play, the play that we saw this team botch so many times in recent seasons, the trick play with runners at the corners of you take off from first base, you get caught in a rundown between first and second base, and then we'll have the runner on third base score. This worked a few weeks ago. This worked again in this game. Nats manager Blake Butera had to challenge the original call of Wood being out at home, but the challenge was successful. Butera, during his postgame session with reporters, flat out said, we've been working on that play since spring training, and the play worked again as the surge of James Wood continued.
2 for 2 on the first and third steal successfully. And again, they did to the Brewers this weekend what the Brewers do to almost everybody else. And I think that was the most impressive part, because you had to think that Milwaukee, if they didn't know it was coming, at least in the back of their mind, knew there was a chance it was coming. And they didn't necessarily play it wrong. They threw down to second. Maybe sometimes you go ahead and just try to backpick the runner at third. And then how about the awful out call by Carlos Torres, who had a rough day behind the plate? Wood was so clearly safe, and obviously they challenged it and got that overturned. How often have we talked since we started this podcast about the little things and the Nats not doing them well? Let's talk about the little things that they are doing well, and that is high on the list right there. And I just want to talk about the home run, because it was a rare pulled home run for James Wood. The pitch is in off the plate. He only hit it 101 miles an hour, so he's slacking here. Shows you can still do damage like that, and pulled the ball to right field for the home run. This is what he's done over the last week. I know there are other great hitters in baseball who go on these kind of heaters. If I'm the Pittsburgh Pirates and they're about to face him the next 4 nights, I am terrified of James Wood, and I'm staying away from him as much as is humanly possible. That's how good he is right now.
Well, marquee pitchers for the Pirates over the first 2 games of this 4-game series. Paul Skenes in Game 1, Mitch Keller in Game 2. So that's going to be mighty interesting, especially, of course, on Monday evening. Skenes versus Wood. Livy Dunn, I hope you're watching, and I hope you're noticing what our guy potentially is going to do to your guy. We'll see. But James Wood now for this regular season, OPS of 1,005. He's got the OPS over 1,000. His on-base percentage is .392. His slugging percentage is .613. But yeah, it's not just Wood. That's the beauty of what's happening right now. The Nats in this game, good offensively. Again, 8 runs, 12 hits, which were the home run by Wood. Also 2 doubles and 9 singles, 2 walks, 4 for 11 with runners in scoring position. And what we are seeing are contributions from all kinds of guys. C.J. Abrams, he is the Nats starting shortstop and number 5 batter, 2 for 4, 2 singles, RBI, sac fly. Mark mentioned Cade Ruiz. He, for a second consecutive game, had a big hit. He came off the bench in this game to play catcher, went 1 for 1 with a big 2-run single. Ruiz in the Nats' 2-run 8th, the 1-out 2-run single up the middle for an 8-6 Nats lead. Brady House, he is the Nats starting DH and number 3 batter, 1 for 5, but the 1 and RBI single. House in the Nats 4-run 7th, a 2-out opposite field RBI single to right field on a 1-2 pitch for a 6-3 Nats lead. We are seeing offensive improvement from Jacob Young. He in this game as the Nats starting center fielder and number 6 batter, 2 for 5 with a double and a single. And you mentioned the pinch hitting. So key in that 4-run 7th, 2 pinch RBI singles, one by Jose Tena, one by Curtis Mead. Tena, a pinch 1-out RBI single up the middle to tie the game at 3. Mead, a pinch 2-out RBI single to left center for a 4-3 Nats lead, despite having been down in the count at 1.02. The Nats have a pinch hitting OPS of 844. Blake Butera so far is pushing all the right buttons as, like I said earlier, the process is doing quite well.
5 for 15 with 4 RBI now for their pinch hitters, and he's not afraid to use it. That's 15 pinch hitters in 15 games. And remember, with the DH, you just don't see this as much. It used to be the National League, you're getting, at least 1, if not 2 a game kind of automatically for the pitcher spot. This is way more than they've pinch hit in the past. He is absolutely going to that move when the catchers are due up late in the game, both for Ruiz and for Millis. And I know Cabert had the big hit later in the game after he had replaced Millis. That was great to see. But overall, the production from Ruiz and Millis has been almost non-existent until that hit by Ruiz. And so you're seeing Butera pinch hit for his catchers a lot. That was the Tena at bat. Tena hasn't played very much. He's kind of been the last man off the bench, and he came through with a big clutch hit there, RBI single. And then you're really seeing Garcia and Mead. It's kind of automatic. One guy's going to start the game based on who the starting pitcher is, and the other guy's almost always going to come in later on, depending on what side the pitcher is, the reliever is coming in from, in say the 7th, 8th inning, whatever that might be. It's been very effective so far. It's been good to see. Curtis Mead has kind of been a revelation for them. This is turning out really well. They're finding advantageous matchups for him. That's another key clutch RBI single. And then, of course, he's on the front end of the double steal that helps get that going for Wood to score. Blake Butera wants to use everyone. It's one thing to say you want to use everyone. It's another to put them in the best possible spots to have success. I think that's where they are doing well right now, is clearly using guys in matchups that make sense for them. We didn't see Joey Wiemer in this game. And people saying, hey, he's been one of the most productive hitters. What are you doing? Well, they're really trying to find the right matchups for him against lefties. That wasn't the case in this game. Instead, you get Tena off the bench. You get Mead off the bench. I like how they're using everyone, but I like how they're trying to put everyone into the best matchups they possibly can.
The team is coming off as extremely well prepared and extremely well researched and having a plan. And at least so far, the plan that is being implemented is working. Like, we're seeing a lot of good stuff happen. This team offensively right now is a classic case of the whole being greater than the sum of the parts, because the parts individually do not add up to this team being third in the majors in team OPS, and yet that's exactly where we are. Jacob Young's OPS is at 789. Are you buying what we're seeing here? Jacob Young showing legitimate offensive improvement, at least so far.
I don't know if I'm going to buy all the way on him being that productive. What I will say, these are not cheap hits for him. He is hitting the ball with some authority. He worked on increasing his bat speed over the winter. We talked the other night about Brady House and all the improvements he'd made with his plate discipline and laying off bad pitches. I think Jacob Young deserves some mention here for the improvements that he has made so far. And it's not necessarily about what he's swinging at or not swinging at. It's about just simply hitting the ball harder. This is a guy who did not make loud contact in the past. And if he was getting on base, it was because ground ball singles, bunts, opposite field hits down the first base line. What you're seeing so far from him are line drives to the gaps, left center field, straightaway center field, right center field. And then he can use his speed to turn those into doubles or even triples. So I like that. I want to see a little more before I'm fully convinced that that's going to be true. But what I like is that it's not like he's just getting lucky or taking advantage of, a high BABIP or something like that. He's hitting the ball harder, clearly, and hitting it on a line. And you hope that that is repeatable in the long run.
And his double on Sunday afternoon was a classic case of that. I mean, a leadoff opposite field double off the right center field warning track, despite having been down at 1.12, got to third on a fielding error by the Brewers center fielder, Garrett Mitchell. By the way, the Brewers fielding in this series was really bad. All kinds of sloppiness from Milwaukee defensively, but no need for the Nats to apologize for that. And, it's interesting with Jacob Young because, we go into at least spring training. There's no guarantee Jacob Young is still going to be an everyday outfielder for this team. I mean, the anticipation was Dylan Cruz, James Wood, everyday outfielders, some Robert Hassel, some Dalen Lyle, and maybe some Jacob Young. Instead, here we are, and Jacob Young is very much an everyday player for this team. Like, he is the number one center fielder, the regular center fielder we're seeing on pretty much a game in, game out basis so far.
Well, we know that defensively all the value he's bringing to them, so it was really just a question of can he produce enough offensively. And he doesn't even have to have a high 700 OPS. I mean, that'd be great if he can do it. They don't need that from him. Even a low 700, something in that range for him would be phenomenal when you combine that with the defense and hopefully good base running as well. I mean, he's hitting 6th in this lineup today. Again, it's unconventional. I don't know if that works in the long run. And given who the guys were behind him, maybe that makes sense. But he is more than holding his own and doing it in a way that it does feel at least somewhat sustainable for now.
Are you a law firm partner or associate stuck on an underperforming team while your competitors are passing you by? Is your law firm still living in 2019 and pretending everything is okay? Meanwhile, the whole firm is having the same bad luck as Josiah Gray is having. Unlike James Wood, you've got options and you don't have to stay on a 60-win roster. Longtime Nats Chat sponsor Mason Kalfas is the best legal recruiter in the D.C. market. Mason and his team at Zenith Legal specialize in placing partners, associates, and senior government lawyers at top firms in Washington, D.C. and across the country. Mason and his team have placed attorneys at more than half of the AmLaw 100. And while you might be reading doom and gloom in the legal press, the reality is that many practices are red hot. Antitrust, private equity, and real estate, among others. Plus, Zenith Legal has something that no other legal recruiting firm offers, a proprietary app that lets you track exactly where you've been submitted and helps Mason's team match you with the right opportunity faster and more precisely. Mason regularly works with senior lawyers from the DOJ, SEC, and law firms to help them level up, whether that means a better platform, stronger clients, or, let's be honest, a lot more money. Even in slow markets, Mason has helped attorneys dramatically increase their compensation. Unlike Jurickson Profar, you don't need a suspension to take a year off and rethink your future. You can make a smart move right now. Make a call to the bullpen. Mason Kalfas will help you find and negotiate a better deal for your career and future. Call Mason today, 202-486-3535. That's 202-486-3535.
Big thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp, for partnering with us for this important conversation about mental health.
This is Steve Smith here, former NFL wide receiver and host of the 89 show on YouTube. So having a counselor and working with BetterHelp, that gives you an opportunity to really start to unpack. But people don't understand, when you unpack things, you also open up a box that you're not always sure what's inside. So I think that's why seeing a professional is extremely important. If you need someone to open up to, visit BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/89 to get started.
You're listening to this podcast, so I know you've got a curious mind. Here's a helpful fact you may not know yet. Drivers who switch and save with Progressive save over $900 on average. Pop over to Progressive.com, answer some questions, and you'll get a quick quote with discounts that are easy to come by. In fact, 99% of their auto customers earn at least one discount. Visit Progressive.com and see if you can enjoy a little cash back. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. National average 12-month savings of $946 by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive between June 2024 and May 2025. Potential savings will vary.
Varland ready. Right-hander kicks and delivers. Swinging a high fly ball. Right field toward the corner. Goes James Wood. And into foul ground. He makes the catch. And a Curly W's in the books. The Nationals have swept a 3-game series from the Brewers in Milwaukee for the first time since the 2006 season. They sweep this series from the Brewers. The Nationals improve to 7-8. A Curly W in the books. The final score, the Washington Nationals 8, the Milwaukee Brewers 6.
So the Nats starting pitcher for this 8-6 win at the Brewers on Sunday afternoon was Zack Littell. He allowed 3 runs in 5 innings. He gave up 6 hits, which were 3 solo homers and 3 singles. He had 3 strikeouts versus no walks. He threw a lot of strikes, 71 pitches, 50 strikes, just 21 balls. But the home run was a problem. Littell in the bottom of the third allowed a run as he gave up a 2-out opposite field solo homer by Bryce Terang to left field to put the Brewers up 1-0. Littell in the bottom of the fourth allowed a run as he gave up a 1-out first pitch solo homer by Jake Bauers to right field to tie the game at 2. Littell in the bottom of the fifth allowed a run as he gave up a 1-out solo homer by Bryce Terang to center field for a 3-2 Brewers lead. And that was some shot by Terang, 433 feet as projected by StatCast. So Zack Littell has had an issue with the homer. We've talked about this previously. Littell, for the 2025 regular season, allowed the second most home runs in MLB 36. That was second to the 38 homers allowed by Nats starting pitcher Jake Irvin. Other than the homers, Littell really was not that bad in this game, but the homers were a bit of a problem. 3 given up, although all 3 were solo shots. If you're going to give up homers, you want them to be solo shots, but 3 homers in 5 innings, obviously not good.
No, but as you said, it's now 5 home runs that he's given up in 3 starts, and they've all been solo. So we know this has been a problem for him. Last year was, among the league leaders in home runs, despite having a low ERA and a generally good season that he had. So you can kind of live with it if that's all that it is, as long as you're not walking hitters in front of the homers. And we're going to get to Cole Henry, who did exactly that. As long as you're not walking batters, as long as you're not giving up too many hits, it does minimize the damage, and I think you can live with that. Yes, you'd love to keep the ball in the park, but it might just kind of be who he is. He doesn't have overpowering stuff, so if he doesn't locate it exactly right, he may be subject to that kind of damage. I was kind of surprised. I know it wasn't a great outing by him, but I was surprised he got pulled after 5 innings at only 71 pitches. And if you got a fully fresh bullpen, I get it, but they clearly didn't. They had probably their top 3 guys unavailable in Clayton Beeter, Cionel Perez, and in Brad Lord, who all had to pitch. Well, the first 2 guys pitched the last 2 days, and then Lord pitched in long relief the night before. If you're dealing with that kind of diminished options in a bullpen that we already know is shaky, and Zack Littell is a starter who was signed here to be an innings eater for you, I am surprised that after 5 innings they pulled the plug on that. And I'm sure there were numbers that said facing the lineup the 3rd time, you don't want to do that. It's still early in the year. But I think sometimes you also got to look at just the broader situation. They're in the middle of early in a stretch here of 17 games in a row. I really would like to see him pushed to 6 innings, even if he gave up another run or 2 in the 6th. But obviously it worked out in the end. And big picture, I think Littell's been fine so far. You'd love to limit the home runs, sure. But as long as they're solo, I think they'll be okay with that.
You wonder how much of him being pulled was out of fear of the home run. The other thing is he fully built up at this point? March 10th was when he signed with the Nats. Is he good to go, or is he still on a bit of a workload limit here?
I figured he was by now. He had gotten to 75 pitches in a previous outing, and there wasn't a whole lot of high stress here. So I thought you could get him up to 90, at least give him a shot at the 6th inning. But we're seeing Blake Butera really do this with pretty much everyone. Hardly anybody is going deep in games, and not just because they're ineffective. They have been pulling guys after 5 innings for the most part. And I get it, it's early in the year and you want to protect guys, and there's all the data that says you don't want your starter facing a lineup 3 times. That's fine. But again, look at what your bullpen is. Look how much you're using your bullpen, and you're 3 days into a 17-day stretch. At some point here, you do have to let the reins loose a little bit here and let your starters go a little deeper if they're effective, if the pitch count isn't too high. I thought this was the perfect day to do that. Look, it worked out. So, no complaints. But, let's see the next day and the next day after that if there's any domino effect from having to rely on the bullpen so much.
And with the Nats bullpen in this game, 4 Nats relievers combined to allow 3 runs in 4 innings. And we had all kinds of things going on with Nats relievers in this game. So first of all, potential injury here. Ken Waldichuk, he officially allowed 1 run in 1 2/3 innings, left the game in the bottom of the 7th off wincing in pain off throwing a pitch, the kind of scene you never want to see with a pitcher. We saw it here with Waldichuk, who does have significant injury history. Blake Butera, during his postgame session with reporters, really didn't have much to say in terms of an update on Waldichuk. Obviously, he will be looked at, but what happened with him did not look good. Then came Cole Henry. He officially allowed 2 runs without recording an out, faced 3 batters, got no outs. He was a mess. He came into the game in that bottom of the 7th. Bases empty, 2 outs, Nats up 6-3. I mean, potentially Cole Henry is in the game here to eat up some innings. Instead, he walked each of the 2 batters he faced to begin his outing, Bryce Terang, William Contreras, and then Henry gave up a 2-out, 3-run homer by Gary Sanchez to left field to tie the game at 6. And this was interesting. The homer came one pitch after a successful ABS challenge by Sanchez for a 2-0 count. I don't know if the difference between 1-1 or 2-0 was that deep to where it impacted the pitch selection and impacted the result of that third pitch of the plate appearance. But it was hard to ignore that it was a very good challenge by Sanchez, and then he just walloped the next pitch by Cole Henry. However, the other two relievers used by the Nats in this game ended up being quite effective. P.J. Poulin, in a lot of ways, saved the day. He tossed 1 2/3 perfect innings. We know Poulin has been very up and down, but he in this game faced 5 batters, got all of them out, and Gus Varland was used to close out the game, and he tossed a perfect bottom of the 9th for the save. Wild game for the Nats bullpen, but ultimately the Nats get this win.
All right, let's start. We'll go in order here. Let's start with Waldichuk. That was not good. He's had Tommy John surgery a couple of years ago, and you saw, first of all, he spikes the pitch. He's walking around the mound in obvious discomfort. Dale Gilbert comes to the mound, and you could see that Waldichuk pointed to the inside of his elbow. I think Blake Butera referred to it as forearm, 6 of one, half dozen of the other. It's not an area you want to see. And just the look on Waldichuk's face, the resignation, the fact he knew there wasn't even going to be an attempt to try to throw another pitch. He was out of there right away. You hope it's not the worst case scenario, but you do have to, worry that it could be something like that. And I think at minimum, the Nats are going to have somebody meet them in Pittsburgh, at least one arm, if not 2. Even in a best case scenario, they might have needed a fresh arm anyways, given how much the bullpen worked this weekend. But certainly with Waldichuk's, status to be determined, you got to bring in somebody to make sure you have another arm there who can be activated if needed. That was very unfortunate. Cole Henry walks and homers, and it's not just him. It's been a lot of guys. It's been the number one issue with this bullpen. But boy, was that frustrating to see. I think we're finding out maybe why he wasn't used in high leverage spots those first couple weeks. There's just not a lot of trust in him right now. We know the stuff for him is really good, but he's got to command it. When he's off, these are non-competitive pitches that he's throwing. And so that's a real concern, and that worries me in the bigger picture of what's going on with him, somebody we thought would be one of their top late inning arms. And at the moment, I don't think you can trust him to do that. Poulin, lifesaver. As you said, it's been very hit or miss with him. When he's been good, he's been very good. When he's not, it's been pretty bad. But that was absolute lifesaver. And then I knew all along they probably don't have Perez, they probably don't have Beater, and they probably don't have Lord. If they get to a spot where they have a lead late in the game, who is their closer today? They were pretty much down to either Gus Varland or Paxton Schultz, as best as I could tell. They went with Varland. Great job by him. 1, 2, 3, first career save. This is a guy whose brother, Louis Varland, pitches for the Blue Jays, was a workhorse for them on their World Series team last year. Far more accomplished than Gus, and yet Gus has family bragging rights now, the first career Major League save in the Varland family. Good for him to do that. When you get the opportunity and you rise to the occasion, you earn your manager's trust. And so if the situation were to rise again, I could very much see Blake Butera calling on Varland to be the guy for that spot.
We, of course, have seen plenty of bad Nats bullpens over the years. I cannot, however, recall a Nats bullpen for which there were less and fewer defined roles multiple weeks into a regular season than what we have right now. I mean, you and I do a podcast about this team. If you forced me to name roles for relievers in the bullpen right now, I don't think I can do it. I don't think those roles exist. We've never seen such a grab bag scenario with a Nats bullpen multiple weeks into a regular season like this. There are no roles, at least not yet.
I think Beater's the closer, at least if there's right-handers coming up. If it's lefties, it's probably Perez, but they both have to be available for that to happen. And obviously, they weren't going to push either of them to go 3 days in a row. Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. Even in the years where their bullpen was a complete disaster, they usually had one guy that you knew for sure what they were doing, whether that was their closer or a top lefty or something like that. In this case, it really is up for grabs. Take your pick. And you just hope that over time, a few of them establish themselves and earn the trust of their manager where you do get roles. I mean, I understand modern baseball, you don't have to have the defined, hey, here's our 7th inning guy. He's our 8th inning guy. He's our 9th inning guy. But you do have to at least have an idea of who you want to use in the highest leverage spots against particular parts of the lineup. That can't really be changing on a day-to-day basis. So I hope, and I'm sure Blake Butera hopes this as well, that, within the first month of the year, a few guys have stepped up and kind of established who they are and what they can do for them late in games, so that all things being equal, who needs to get ready and get warm when. Right now, as you said, it's kind of a grab bag, other than I think I want to call Beater and Perez their top two guys, lefty and righty, but it's not always assured. And it's not like either of them has been so lights out that you feel like it's a slam dunk when they come into a game.
No, I mean, the roles you're looking for, A, bullpen, B, bullpen. Like you said, who are our best high leverage guys? And right now, I don't know that anyone really qualifies as a reliable high leverage guy. Al Galdi here to tell you about Window Nation's The More You Buy, The More You Save sale. But before that, the Window Nation look into the future.
So 1-0 Red Wings. First pitch to Philip Glasser. He swings and belts it deep right field. Taylor Cruz going back. It's over his head and off the wall. Plays the carom beautifully. Fires it into the relay man. Stop sign at third. Late for Morales as he'll scamper back to the bag and slide back safely with no throw there.
Well, happy spring. Window Nation is ready for spring, and Window Nation wants Nats Chat podcast listeners to know that there's no better time to upgrade your home with great Window Nation windows than right now, as Window Nation is offering to Nats Chat podcast listeners the More You Buy, the More You Save sale. Save up to 50%. Get your windows with 0% interest for 5 years. During uncertain times, one of the best investments that you can make is investing in your home. So visit windownation.com now to book a consultation and tell Window Nation that Al Galdi sent you. That's windownation.com and tell Window Nation that Al Galdi sent you.
26,294. Quiet at the moment here in Milwaukee. Here's the set. The 2-2 delivery. Swinging a line drive, shallow center. It is falling. It's a base hit for Mead. Tena scores the go-ahead run. Wood dashes to third, and the Nationals lead it 4-3. Curtis Mead delivers the pinch hit go-ahead RBI single here in the 7th inning. Blake Butera has pushed all the right buttons in this frame.
The Nats get the sweep, and all things considered, I don't know how you're displeased with 7 and 8 over 15 games. And next up is, dare I say, a big series for the Nats? Question mark. A 4-game series at the Pittsburgh Pirates, one of the exciting teams in MLB so far, 9-6, just won 2 out of 3 at the Chicago Cubs. And your pitching matchup for Monday evening's Game 1, 6:40 first pitch, Cade Cavalli versus Paul Skenes. It is rare these days that you get a true marquee pitching matchup. I'm not saying Cavalli is Skenes, okay? But for the Nats, he's the number one pitcher. Skenes is maybe the number one pitcher on the planet. This is going to be a lot of fun on Monday evening.
Yeah, who would have thought, April 13th, Pirates Nats at PNC Park would be drawing the attention of the baseball world, and it probably will. This coming off of the Penguins and Caps just playing over the weekend twice. So a little Pittsburgh DC rivalry going on here. I want to see, can these guys offensively come close to doing against Skenes what they just did to the Brewers? Hey, they're facing Brandon Woodruff, who's a good pitcher, on Sunday, and they had some success. Obviously, the Brewers as a staff have been good. They've already faced the Dodgers, the Cubs, and the Phillies. They have faced some decent pitching so far and had success. Maybe nobody to the level of Skenes, but I want to see how they do for that. I want to see Cade Cavalli. Been good signs all along, but even at his best, he's been getting into jams and having to pitch his way out of it. So I think the key there for him, try to have some clean innings, keep the pitch count down. Maybe somehow we can get a pitcher who actually goes 6+ innings and you don't have to have this high wire act with the bullpen late. I would love to see that from Cavalli. Let's see if they push him to do that. But, it's not just on the pitching side. There are a lot of really talented young players on both these teams. Connor Griffin of the Pirates, who just signed a 9-year extension. O'Neal Cruz, who's going to challenge James Wood for the exit velocity title. How many balls are going to be hit hard by those two? Over 110 miles an hour in this series. I want to see that. This is a marquee matchup in mid-April between two teams that we don't normally think of as like marquee teams in baseball.
Game 2, Tuesday evening, 6:40, Miles Michaelis will be the Nats starting pitcher. Game 3, Wednesday evening, 6:40, Jay Gervin will be the Nats starting pitcher. And Game 4, Thursday afternoon at 12:35, Foster Griffin will be the Nats starting pitcher. We have a shout-out to deliver to Sam Lewis, Glynis Healy, and Walker Washington Lewis from your friend Vivek. So glad you can make it down for opening day for Walker's first ball game and watch a superstar hit a 3-run homer. C.J. Abrams, not that other Dodgers guy. Even though we lost the game, it felt like a win because of friends like you and our shared love for the Nats Chat podcast, of course. Thank you very much for that, Vivek, and a hello to Sam and Glynis and Walker for being listeners of the podcast and being fans of the Nats. And, you know, like I said, I mean, it's 15 games, right? We have many more to go, but I think all things considered, if you're a Nats fan, I don't know how you're displeased with what we're seeing here so far, okay? Yes, the pitching is an adventure, but the offense has been so much fun to watch, and the process is showing signs of being what it was advertised to be, and I think there are a lot of positives here to take over these first 15 games.
Yeah, if you were a fan of the larger process that the new group is undergoing from the start, then you're thrilled with what you've seen. And you say, yeah, there are holes and things that have to be addressed in the long run, but there's so many encouraging signs from the lineup in particular that you should be excited about the long-term prospects. The counter argument to that would be this. If you were someone that was not fully on board with what the new group was doing, if you were someone that said, hey, there's actually talent here, they should spend some money to supplement what they have, don't worry about 3 years from now, worry about trying to actually be good right now, I think you have a decent argument to say they're 7-8. And if you just have a halfway competent bullpen and one more starting pitcher instead of Miles Michaelis, you're 10-5 now, easily. And so there is an alternate universe out there where Paul Taboni came in and said, you know what? The cupboard's not so bare. Let's try to add to it. Let's go get a decent starting pitcher to help out. Let's get a real first baseman. Let's sign some relief pitchers and see if we can be an 85 to 88 win team this year. I mean, we talked about that all winter. Like, is that possible? They would view it that way. Clearly, that's not the approach they took. But there was an alternate universe out there where they could have tried that. Would it have worked? I don't know. Would it have hurt them in the long run? Maybe so. So if you're all in on the process, yes, great start to the season. And I think it is ultimately the right thing for them to do. But you could almost argue that the way this has gone so far reiterates that there was an opportunity to treat this differently and actually try to be more successful this year. And if they had done that, this team might actually be in a really competitive position right now.
I think a key item in that discussion is, what did Paul Taboni truly think about the cupboard? Because his actions suggest that he didn't think there was much to that cupboard. And the fact that he, by the end of the preseason, had demoted Dylan Cruz and Robert Hassel III, I think that tells you that Taboni was not overwhelmed with the cupboard. And so, we all along did wonder, like, what does Paul Taboni truly think of what he's taking over here? Forget about what he says publicly. He has to say certain things publicly, but privately, when he has closed-door meetings with Ani Colombi and Blake Butera, what are they saying about the talent on this team? The way this team behaved in the offseason, the fact that Cruz and Hassel got demoted, I think that tells you that they were not overwhelmed with what they took over.
100%. They don't trade Mackenzie Gore if they're thinking that. They don't send those guys down. They don't essentially punt on the bullpen. Yes, there were financial considerations to it all, but if he really wanted to, he could have signed a few more relievers, spent a little bit of money there. He didn't have to sign Miles Michaelis for $2.25. Again, we've talked about, at the time, they probably didn't know he was going to get Zack Littell for the $7 million, but they could have aggressively gone after Littell from the start and paid him even more money. They could have gone after a first baseman. They could have signed a few relievers. And I agree. I don't think this was as simple as ownership saying, no, your budget's going to be minimal. Think long term. Go for the whole Tampa Bay Rays approach to this. I think a lot of this was Taboni not believing this team was as close to ready to win as perhaps they look right now. Again, it's 15 games. I don't want to get too caught up in that. And I'm not saying the way they went about this was wrong. I think there was a lot of logic behind it. And in the long run, it may prove to have been a really smart strategy. But I do think it's interesting. They've been so competitive so far, and the games they've lost have been a result of some very specific things that could have been addressed over the winter. Like, if you have Mackenzie Gore instead of Miles Michaelis in your rotation right now, What kind of difference might that have made? If you sign a couple of relief pitchers who have some experience, what kind of difference could that have made? I think it's a fascinating alternate universe out there to consider here as they are 7 and 8.
The 2026 MLB trade deadline is on Monday evening, August 3rd at 6. Will the Nats be sellers or buyers? No, we're not there yet, but just something to think about. Hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. Email us natschatpodcast@gmail.com. A salute to a great sponsor of this podcast, Mason Kalfas. This installment of Nats Chat is brought to us by Mason. He is the top legal recruiter in Washington, D.C. Mason has been with us since our first season. You can reach him at 202-486-3535. Mason Kalfas, the James Wood of legal recruiters. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat, courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. Great to have you with us. Thank you for listening. We'll talk to you next time. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi on the Nats Chat Podcast.
Here's the pitch to House. Swinging a little looper, shallow right. That's going to fall for a hit. Mead coming around third. He'll score. And the Nationals lead it 6-3. Brady House bloops a single to right field. And the Nationals are doing it to the Brewers' tough relievers here on a Sunday afternoon in Milwaukee.